My name is Ingrid Myers. I'm 32 years old. And last Mother's Day, my fiancé's mother stood on a stage in front of 500 people, pointed at my mother, and called her trash into a microphone. Then my fiancé laughed. Interesting thing about public humiliation. Sometimes the betrayal hurts less than the audience watching it happen. The ballroom froze. Crystal chandeliers glowing overhead. Waiters standing motionless beside champagne towers. 500 wealthy people suddenly discovering silence tastes different when cruelty becomes too obvious. My mother didn't cry. Didn't yell. Didn't even flinch. She folded her napkin carefully onto the table. Straightened the pearl brooch pinned above her heart. Then looked at me quietly. And honestly? That hurt more than the insult itself. Because women who spent their lives surviving humiliation learn how to absorb pain without displaying it publicly. I stood up slowly. Took her hand. And walked us out of the ballroom without saying a word. No dramatic speech. No shattered wine glass. No scene. Just dignity leaving the room. 3 minutes later. Sitting in the parking lot beneath yellow valet lights. I made one phone call. 3 words. Do it now. At 11:15 p.m., the Connecticut Attorney General's office received a fraud report involving the Carrington Family Foundation. And honestly? Patricia Carrington had no idea she'd just detonated her own life publicly. But the phone call only makes sense if you understand the 6 months before it. Because the first time Patricia Carrington insulted my mother, she did it smiling. Interesting strategy, honestly. Because wealthy people rarely weaponize cruelty loudly at first. They package it as elegance, refinement, concern. The bridal shower invitation arrived without my mother's name on it. Cream envelope. Gold lettering. Expensive paper thick enough to feel important. I noticed immediately. Mom's not listed. Patricia tilted her head slightly across the kitchen island. Cashmere sweater. Perfect manicure wrapped around a wine glass. Oh. Tiny pause. I assumed she wouldn't feel comfortable with our crowd. Interesting wording. Because exclusion always sounds cleaner when disguised as protection. Not. We don't want her there. Just. She might feel uncomfortable. My mother worked 32 years as a public school nurse in Bridgeport. She treated broken noses, panic attacks, asthma attacks, head lice outbreaks, children who came to school hungry because free lunch was their only real meal. She survived all of it, making $38,000 a year. And somehow, Patricia Carrington believed Ellen Myers would be intimidated by women discussing vineyard vacations beside catered mini quiches. Interesting priorities. I pushed back gently. She's my mother. Patricia smiled immediately. Of course she is, sweetheart. Then softer. But these events can feel overwhelming for certain people. Certain people. Interesting category. Because rich families love creating invisible social castes while pretending they don't exist. Derek stood beside the refrigerator during that entire conversation. Holding bottled water. Silent. And honestly? That silence became the real problem long before I admitted it. My fiancé had perfected a dangerous skill growing up inside the Carrington family. Survival through non-interference. Christmas made everything worse. The Carrington estate looked like a department store catalog exploded across 2 acres. White lights wrapped around imported pine garlands. Professional carolers near the staircase. Caterers carrying silver trays between rooms larger than my childhood apartment. Patricia handed out gifts after dinner. Designer scarves. Golf club memberships. A $400 wool coat for me. Then she handed my mother a small pharmacy gift bag. Inside. A $15 candle. Drugstore clearance sticker still attached underneath. My mother smiled anyway. "Thank you, Patricia." And Patricia laughed softly. I thought something simple would suit her. The room shifted awkwardly afterward. Not enough for anyone to intervene. Just enough for everyone to notice. Interesting thing about observers. Most people recognize cruelty instantly. They just calculate social consequences before responding to it. My mother placed the candle beside her purse carefully. No embarrassment visible. No reaction. And honestly, that almost made me cry right there at the table. Because women like Ellen Myers spend their entire lives making other people comfortable with disrespect. Driving home afterward, I finally confronted Derek. That was humiliating. He gripped the steering wheel tighter. Snow reflecting across the windshield. "You know how Mom is." 5 words. Interesting. Because weak men often summarize emotional abuse with casual familiarity instead of accountability. "She means well." There it was. The defense. Always the defense. Not. "That was wrong." Not. "I'll talk to her." Just. "That's how she is." Meaning. Adapt. Absorb it. Endure quietly. Interesting how often women are expected to survive situations men refuse to confront. 3 weeks before the gala, I overheard Patricia on the phone arranging seating assignments. The Carrington kitchen carried sound strangely. Marble counters. High ceilings. Every word echoing sharper than intended. "She's lovely." Patricia's voice floated down the hallway. "But keep Ellen away from the Wentworths." Pause. "I won't have her embarrassing us." Us. Interesting pronoun. Because somehow my mother's existence threatened the Carrington brand publicly. I stood frozen beside the pantry doorway holding a glass of water. Then heard Derek respond softly. Not arguing. Not defending. Just listening. That moment changed something permanently inside me. Not dramatically. Quietly. Like a structural crack forming beneath a building before collapse becomes visible. My Aunt Vivian started texting articles around that same time. How to navigate old money families. Etiquette tips for new social circles. Blending different backgrounds gracefully, smiling face with smiling eyes. Interesting use of emojis. Because passive aggression always looks stranger wearing smiley faces. I showed Derek the texts. The guest list issue. The candle. The seating chart conversation. Everything. He rubbed the back of his neck immediately. Interesting tell. Because Derek only touched the back of his neck when he wanted conversations to end without resolution. She's old-fashioned. Another excuse. Different wording. Same surrender. My mother visited my apartment the following Tuesday. Rain tapping softly against the kitchen windows. Bridal magazines stacked beside the toaster. She flipped through them quietly while I made tea. Stopping occasionally at dress photos. Flower arrangements. Venue layouts. Then she paused at a picture of a bride walking beside her mother. You happy, baby? Interesting thing about mothers like mine. They ask important questions gently enough to let you lie if you need to. I looked at her carefully. 58 years old. Gray beginning at the temples. Hands rough from decades of wrapping sprained wrists and checking temperatures. Still beautiful. Still tired in places life never apologized for. I am. She nodded slowly. Then said something I didn't fully understand until months later. Then I'm happy too. That was my mother's entire philosophy, honestly. If I survived. She survived. Before leaving, She reached into her purse and handed me a small velvet box. Inside, a pearl brooch. Tiny plastic pearls clustered on a gold-colored pin. Goodwill clearance sticker still attached underneath. $12. I knew because she forgot to peel it off. For the gala, she said softly. I wanted something nice. Honestly? My throat closed immediately. Because my mother spent decades making poverty look graceful enough other people wouldn't feel uncomfortable around it. It's beautiful. She smiled. Pinned it against her sweater. And for 1 second? Beneath the kitchen light, those cheap plastic pearls looked real. Then she said the sentence that stayed with me later in the parking lot outside the gala. You don't owe people your peace, baby. Interesting advice. Because at the time, I still thought peace meant endurance. I hadn't learned yet that sometimes peace requires confrontation first. The Carrington Family Foundation handled around $2.8 million annually. After-school programs, reading initiatives, scholarship funds. On paper, everything looked legitimate. That's usually how fraud works honestly. Derek asked for my help 4 months before the gala. Their accountant retired unexpectedly. Annual audit approaching. Just review a few things, he said. You're the best at this. Interesting compliment. Because sometimes people hire experts without realizing expertise works both directions. The foundation office sat above a real estate agency downtown. Gray carpet. Fluorescent lights. Metal filing cabinets labeled in red tabs. I started reviewing vendor invoices Tuesday morning around 9:20. Standard non-profit documentation mostly. Nothing unusual. Until the 4th invoice. Hartfield Consulting. $113,000. Strategic Advisory Services. Interesting. Because advisory firms usually leave footprints. Employees. Websites. Phone numbers. Hartfield Consulting had none. I checked the previous year. Same invoice. Same amount. Then the year before that. Same again. 3 identical payments. 3 years straight. $339,000 total. I leaned back slowly in the office chair staring at the invoice. And honestly? That was the exact moment instinct kicked in. Not emotion. Pattern recognition. Forensic accountants learn to spot fraud the way paramedics spot heart attacks. Certain details simply feel wrong immediately. That night, I searched every business registry available. Connecticut. Massachusetts. New York. Nothing. Finally. Delaware. There it was. Hartfield Consulting LLC. Registered through a mailbox service in Wilmington. No employees. No office. No activity. Just paperwork. Interesting thing about shell companies. They exist exactly enough to move money quietly. I cross-referenced bank routing information next. Every payment traced to a Fairfield County account under one name. Del Santo. Patricia's maiden name. I stared at the screen for a very long time after that. 3 years. $340,000. From a children's charity. Into Patricia Carrington's private shell company. And honestly? I didn't panic. That surprises people sometimes. But forensic accounting trains emotion out of discovery. You document first. React later. I printed everything. Invoices. Routing slips. Authorization signatures. Bank confirmations. Then created a folder. Red tabs across the top. Title. Carrington Foundation. Interesting choice maybe. But deep down, I think I already understood what the file would eventually become. Evidence. At 2:07 a.m., I finally closed the folder. Sat alone at my kitchen table. Rain still tapping softly outside. And realized something terrifying. The woman humiliating my mother publicly wasn't just cruel. She was corrupt. And the man I planned to marry? Worked there every single day. I gave Derek 90 days. Interesting number, honestly. Because 90 days feels professional. Measured. Like a probation period before termination. Not an ultimatum. Not emotional blackmail. Just time. Enough time for a grown man to decide whether he wanted comfort or integrity. The conversation happened in our kitchen at 11:42 p.m. Rain sliding softly down the apartment windows. 2 untouched bowls of pasta cooling beside the sink. And the red evidence folder sitting between us on the table like something radioactive. Derek opened it slowly. Invoices first. Routing slips. Wire confirmations. Then the shell company registration. Hartfield Consulting LLC. Registered under Patricia Del Santo. His mother. Interesting thing about privileged people. They always think corruption belongs to other families until paperwork introduces them personally. He read silently for almost 6 minutes. No interruption. No denial. Just breathing getting slightly shallower with every page. Finally. He closed the folder carefully. Then whispered. "Oh my God." And honestly? That scared me more than anger would've. Because deep down, recognition means the truth wasn't completely surprising. You knew something was wrong? Derek rubbed both hands over his face immediately. Interesting gesture. Because people do that when they're trying to physically delay reality entering fully. I knew Mom moved money around sometimes. Pause. 4 events. Interesting rewrite for embezzlement. Moved money around. Like furniture. Like seasonal decorations. Not stolen donor funds from literacy programs. I stared at him across the kitchen table. You work there. I don't handle accounting. Defensive now. Faster breathing. Eyes avoiding mine. Interesting. Because innocent people usually move toward problems instinctively. Complicit people move away from responsibility linguistically first. She made me vice president for appearances mostly. Appearances. Interesting word inside the Carrington family, honestly. Everything was appearances. The gala. The foundation. The engagement. Even kindness sometimes. I slid the folder back toward him slowly. You have 90 days. He blinked. 90 days for what? To tell the board. Silence. Huge silence. Because suddenly, the problem stopped being theoretical. It became consequence. Derek stood up immediately. Started pacing. Interesting thing about men raised inside powerful families. They mistake panic for strategy constantly. You don't understand what this would do to her. There it was. Not. What this would do to the children losing scholarship money. Not. What this would do to donors being defrauded. Just Patricia. Always Patricia. She could go to prison. I nodded once. Yes. And honestly? That was the first moment Derek truly looked afraid of me. Not because I yelled. Not because I threatened him. Because calm women with evidence terrify people protected by silence. He slept on the couch that night. Not by my request. By instinct. Like his body already understood distance belonged between us now. The next morning. Patricia called at 8:03 a.m. Bright voice. Artificial warmth. My darling. Interesting greeting from a woman who treated my mother like a social contamination risk. We're finalizing the gala seating today. Of course. Always logistics. Always optics. She talked for 7 uninterrupted minutes about centerpieces, sponsors, auction baskets. And honestly, listening to her describe floral arrangements while I knew about the shell company felt surreal. Like hearing a bank robber discuss curtain colors during a hostage situation. Then she casually added, "I moved your mother to the auxiliary tables." I froze immediately. Auxiliary tables. Interesting phrase. Because wealthy people invent elegant vocabulary for segregation constantly. What auxiliary tables? Oh, sweetheart. Tiny laugh. The sponsor families sit closer to the stage. Meaning. Real people in front. My mother in back. Again. Interesting pattern. Because humiliation becomes ritual once people stop facing consequences for it. I kept my voice steady. She's my mother. And this is my foundation. There it was. Not Derek's. Not the board's. Mine. Possession. Control. Patricia continued before I could respond. We have standards to maintain. Standards. Interesting word from a woman laundering charity money through shell companies. I hung up without saying goodbye. First time ever. And honestly, that tiny act felt strangely enormous. Because women conditioned to maintain politeness through disrespect experience silence like rebellion eventually. Day 21. Derek still hadn't reported anything. Instead, he started managing me emotionally. Interesting shift. More compliments. More dinners. More future planning conversations. Like affection itself became crisis management. One night he arrived home carrying tulips. Yellow. My favorite. He cooked salmon. Opened expensive wine. Then sat beside me carefully on the couch. Maybe there's another way. Interesting phrase. Because people protecting corruption always begin negotiations before accountability. What other way? We could convince Mom to repay it quietly. Quietly. There it was. The family religion. Not honesty. Containment. Image preservation. $340,000. I looked directly at him. From literacy grants. Derek exhaled sharply. She didn't mean for it to become this big. Interesting defense. Because theft apparently stays morally manageable below certain dollar amounts for rich people. I stood up slowly. Walked to the kitchen. Poured water just to create movement between us. And honestly, that was the moment I understood the relationship was already over. Not because of Patricia. Because Derek genuinely believed protecting his mother mattered more than protecting the truth. There's no future after that realization. Day 37. My mother visited again. Sunday afternoon. She brought homemade cabbage soup in plastic containers because nurses express love through feeding people instinctively. We sat on the balcony while rain clouds rolled over the city slowly. I finally told her everything. The shell company. The stolen money. Derek's silence. The seating arrangements. All of it. My mother listened quietly. Hands wrapped around a chipped coffee mug. No interruption. No dramatic reaction. Then softly asked, "Do you still want to marry him?" Interesting thing about emotionally intelligent women. They cut through complications faster than therapists sometimes. I answered honestly. I want the version of him that doesn't exist around his family. She nodded once slowly. Then said something devastatingly accurate. That means he doesn't exist. Silence afterward. Rain tapping against the balcony railing softly. Traffic humming 6 floors below us. And honestly, I think part of me already knew she was right before I answered. Day 52. Patricia invited me to lunch at the country club. White tablecloths. Piano music. Women wearing diamonds before noon. Interesting ecosystem, honestly. Patricia ordered salmon salad. Didn't touch it once. Instead, she spent 40 minutes discussing reputation, family image, legacy, appearances. Then finally leaned forward slightly and asked the real question. You've seemed distant lately. There it was. Not concern about my happiness. Concern about behavioral deviation. I stirred iced tea slowly. Maybe I'm tired. Patricia smiled sympathetically. Tired women make emotional decisions. Interesting sentence. Because controlling people always pathologize independence first. Then came the warning disguised as advice. You should never embarrass the people protecting your future. That sentence landed cold. Not because it scared me. Because suddenly, I realized Patricia viewed every relationship transactionally too. Protection exchanged for obedience. Money exchanged for silence. Belonging exchanged for submission. And honestly, I finally saw Derek clearly after that. He wasn't trapped accidentally. He'd been trained. Day 74? The gala rehearsal dinner happened inside the Grand Meridian Ballroom. Half the decorations already installed. Stage lighting testing overhead. Patricia directing staff like a Broadway producer preparing opening night. At one point, I watched her physically reposition a volunteer 3 inches because symmetry matters. Interesting obsession. Because people unable to control morality often overcompensate by controlling visuals instead. During rehearsal, Patricia tested her speech on stage. Microphone echoing through the empty ballroom. Tonight we honor mothers. Pause. Who sacrifice everything for family. Honestly, I almost laughed. Because somewhere between the shell company and humiliating my mother publicly, Patricia Carrington had become a parody of herself without noticing. After rehearsal, I walked through the ballroom alone briefly. 500 chairs arranged perfectly beneath crystal chandeliers. Sponsor banners glowing gold beneath stage lights. And at the very back, auxiliary tables. My mother's assigned section. Near the kitchen doors. Beside the waitstaff station. Interesting placement. Because cruelty always reveals itself spatially eventually. That night, I sat in my apartment staring at the evidence folder again. 90 days almost finished. Derek still silent. The gala 4 days away. And honestly, I realized something important. I'd spent months believing exposure was my threat. But exposure wasn't revenge anymore. It was responsibility. At 1:13 a.m., I created a draft email. Recipient: Connecticut Attorney General Financial Crimes Division. Subject line: Carrington Foundation Fraud Documentation. Then attached every file. Invoices. Bank transfers. Shell company registration. Everything. I didn't send it yet. Not yet. Because deep down, I still wanted Derek to choose integrity himself. Interesting weakness maybe. But love makes people wait longer than logic ever would. 3 days later, Mother's Day arrived. And Patricia Carrington walked onto a ballroom stage believing she still controlled the story completely. That belief lasted exactly 11 minutes. Mother's Day gala night smelled like orchids and expensive perfume. 500 guests. Crystal chandeliers glowing gold across polished marble floors. Champagne towers reflecting soft violin music through the ballroom. And honestly, everyone looked beautiful. That's the dangerous thing about wealthy scandals. Disaster usually arrives wearing tuxedos. My mother wore navy blue. Simple dress. Pearl brooch pinned carefully above her heart. The $12 one from Goodwill. And somehow, she looked more elegant than anyone else in the room. Interesting thing about dignity. Money can imitate it, but it cannot manufacture it. Patricia Carrington entered the ballroom at exactly 7:02 p.m. Ivory gown. Diamond earrings. Perfect posture. The room shifted around her automatically. Donors approached. Photographers followed. Volunteers straightened instinctively. Power has gravity honestly. Especially when people mistake wealth for morality long enough. Derek found me beside the silent auction tables 20 minutes later. Black tuxedo. Carefully rehearsed smile. And tired eyes. Interesting combination. Because men protecting collapsing systems always look exhausted eventually. You look beautiful, he said quietly. I nodded politely. No kiss. No warmth. Just acknowledgement. He noticed immediately. You're still angry. Interesting interpretation. Because men raised around emotional manipulation often confuse clarity with anger. I'm disappointed. That hit harder. I watched it happen across his face instantly. Because disappointment implies finality. Anger still leaves room for repair. At 7:48. The Gala program officially began. Sponsor videos. Hospital presentations. Scholarship announcements. Applause rising and falling in perfectly timed waves across the ballroom. And throughout all of it, Patricia performed motherhood professionally. Touching shoulders. Laughing warmly. Telling stories about sacrifice and family values into microphones. Interesting performance honestly. Because hypocrisy becomes most dangerous when audiences reward it publicly. Then came the family recognition portion. The moment Patricia loved most every year. Spotlights warmed the stage gold. 500 faces turned forward expectantly. And Patricia lifted the microphone with the confidence of a woman who still believed admiration protected her from consequences. Tonight, she began warmly. We celebrate the mothers who shape our lives. Applause. Automatic. Then Patricia smiled toward the front tables where wealthy donors sat. Some women elevate families. Pause. And some. Her eyes moved slowly across the ballroom. Landed directly on my mother. Simply attached themselves to them. Silence. Tiny silence first. Confused silence. Then Patricia laughed lightly into the microphone. Oh, don't worry, Ellen. Pause. I'm sure bridge clinic nurses have their own kind of dignity. There it was. Publicly. Deliberately. 500 witnesses. Interesting thing about humiliation. The room always recognizes it before the victim reacts. The ballroom froze instantly. Wine glasses paused midair. One waiter actually stopped walking beside the dessert station. My mother sat perfectly still. Hands folded neatly beside her plate. No tears. No anger. Just quiet. And honestly, that quietness broke something inside me permanently. Because women like Ellen Myers spent their entire lives surviving disrespect by minimizing their own pain publicly. Patricia smiled wider into the microphone. Still performing. Still believing control belonged to her. Then she delivered the sentence that destroyed everything. At least Ingrid learned refinement somewhere eventually. Laughter. Not from everyone. But enough. Enough to matter. And then. Derek laughed too. Tiny laugh. Automatic. Nervous. But real. Interesting thing about betrayal. Sometimes it only takes half a second to erase years of love completely. I looked at him across the ballroom. And honestly? I watched the future disappear from his face in real time. My mother reached for her napkin slowly. Folded it once. Carefully. Then stood. No scene. No speech. Just dignity preparing to leave another room politely. I stood immediately. Took her hand. And together. We walked through 500 silent people toward the ballroom exit. No one stopped us. Interesting. Because crowds love power until consequences start entering the room. Outside. Cold night air hit instantly. Valet lights glowing yellow against rain-soaked pavement. My mother finally exhaled once beside me. Not crying. Just tired. Then softly asked. You okay, baby? Interesting question. Because even after humiliation, mothers still check their daughters first. I looked at her. Really looked at her. This woman spent 32 years helping strangers survive emergencies. Worked double shifts. Missed vacations. Re-wore winter coats for a decade at a time so I could attend college without debt. And Patricia Carrington called her trash in front of 500 people because wealth convinced her cruelty was sophistication. Honestly? That was the exact moment my hesitation died completely. I pulled out my phone. Opened the draft email. Connecticut Attorney General Financial Crimes Division. Subject. Carrington Foundation Fraud Documentation. My thumb hovered over send for exactly 1 second. Then my mother touched my wrist gently. You sure? Interesting thing about women raised with dignity. They still ask permission before destroying people who deserve it. I looked back through the ballroom windows. Patricia still on stage. Still smiling. Still believing she controlled the narrative. Derek beside her now. And honestly? I realized something devastatingly simple. Silence protects people like them. Not kindness. Not forgiveness. Silence. So I pressed send. 11:15 p.m. $340,000 in fraudulent transfers reached state investigators in less than 4 seconds. And just like that, the Carrington empire started collapsing invisibly. The first phone call arrived Monday morning at 8:07. Foundation accountant. Then another. Then board members. Then attorneys. Interesting thing about financial investigations. Wealthy people always assume problems can be managed quietly until subpoenas appear. By Tuesday, the Attorney General froze foundation accounts pending review. By Wednesday, local news stations started reporting financial irregularities connected to the Carrington Family Foundation. And suddenly, the same donors who applauded Patricia's speeches stopped answering her calls. Interesting how fast morality changes once headlines arrive. Derek came to my apartment Thursday night. Rain pouring outside. Suit wrinkled. Eyes bloodshot. He looked older. Not physically. Structurally. Like reality finally added weight to him. You reported her. Not accusation. Recognition. I nodded once. She stole from literacy programs. He sat down slowly at my kitchen table. Hands shaking slightly. Interesting. Because men raised inside protected systems never expect consequences to feel this physical. She says you destroyed our family. There it was. Not. She regrets humiliating your mother. Not. She's sorry. Just damage assessment. I looked directly at him. No. Pause. Your mother destroyed it the second she mistook kindness for weakness. Silence filled the kitchen afterward. Rain tapping softly against the windows. Then Derek whispered something heartbreaking. I laughed because I was afraid of her. Interesting confession. Because fear explains behavior sometimes? But it never erases it. I believed him honestly. That was the tragedy. Derek spent his entire life surviving Patricia Carrington instead of becoming separate from her. But survival without courage eventually turns into complicity. And complicit people still cause damage. The engagement ended quietly. No screaming. No dramatic breakup scene. Just paperwork. Returned rings. Cancelled contracts. Two adults finally acknowledging love cannot survive where dignity disappears. 3 months later, Patricia Carrington resigned from the foundation publicly. Federal investigators joined the case afterward. More missing money surfaced. Corporate donors filed civil actions. The Gala sponsors vanished almost overnight. Interesting thing about social empires. They collapse much faster than they rise. My mother never said, "I told you so." Never celebrated. Never mocked them. Instead, she brought cabbage soup to my apartment every Sunday for almost 2 months afterward. Because women like Ellen Myers understand something wealthy people often don't. Real dignity happens privately. Not on stages. The last time I saw Patricia, she looked smaller somehow. Not poorer. Just exposed. Like losing public admiration removed the architecture holding her upright emotionally. She stopped beside me outside a courthouse downtown. Gray coat. No makeup. No photographers. Then quietly asked, "Was humiliating me worth it?" Interesting question. Because even then, she still believed exposure and humiliation were the same thing. I looked at her for several seconds before answering. You humiliated yourself. Pause. I just stopped protecting you from witnesses. And honestly, that was the truth. Because powerful people rarely fall because someone attacks them. They fall because eventually, someone finally stops staying quiet.